Yo, what's going on, y'all? It's Combo Breaker 99. I'm back with another quick video. All right, y'all, back with some more boxing talk. All right, looks like Terence Crawford has some big news this week. Looks like sometime this week they're going to announce his next opponent. Yeah, so I saw this on Barbershop Conversations, and yeah, I was just trying to find out, what's going on with Bud, who's going to be his next opponent. And of course, they did an interview with Bob Arum, and Bob Arum, he was very. I won't say he was very vague about it, but he was definitely giving us some hints about who's going to be Bud's next fight. He said it's going to be announced within the week. It's going to be he's going to name, they're going to announce the date, the location, and of course the opponent. And he said the opponent is a big deal. So they just couldn't drop a date because he said that was a very important thing, and of course the name is a very important thing. So he said it's going to be big. Of course it's a pay-per-view, and the way he's holding on to it, like I said, he said it's going to be a really big fight. So it's got to be one of these three names that I put up here. It's got to be one of those three names. And yeah, we'll see what happens from here. But I put the three possibilities that the fight could be against right here. And I'm going to give you who I think it might be, but I'm going to give you who I think it should be. So starting down the list here, this week they could be announcing Shawn Porter as that fighter. This could be the fighter Crawford's going to be facing on his next pay-per-view come whenever spring or summer. As y'all know, Shawn Porter, he's the number one ranked. He's the number one ranked contender for the WBO belt now, and I'm not sure if he had been activated behind the scenes. Maybe he didn't say anything in the news. He could have went on activated his mandatory, so that could be the fight. Maybe him and Bob Arum, they came to an agreement about how much he could get. As y'all know, Shawn Porter, he turned down $1 million or like $2 million from Bob Arum, for this fight because, he said he makes more than that. He felt like that fight was worth more, which I think it is. I think Shawn Porter definitely deserves more. Whatever his flat rate is, he should get. So hopefully they came to an agreement and this should be the fight. Hopefully this is the fight since, this would be a good test for Terence Crawford, which I talked about in some previous videos on my channel. Next up, Manny Pacquiao. This is a fight that Terence Crawford, he's been trying to seek for years now, almost half a decade now. He's been wanting this fight. Bob Arum, he's kind of protected Manny Pacquiao from this fight because he said, it was a dangerous fight for Manny Pacquiao at this age, but it could possibly be that fight. Since Manny Pacquiao vacated his WBA belt due to inactivity, he's trying to get back into the mix, and try to take on some big fights and get more money since the Conor McGregor fight didn't come to fruition, the Ryan Garcia exhibition didn't come to fruition, so now he kind of has to get back on the path and, face some of these tough welterweight fights. And like I said, this is a fight that Terence Crawford's been wanting. He's willing to take the lesser amount of money in this fight, even though he has the belt. I think Manny Pacquiao talked about taking like $42 million for this fight. I don't know if they found an investor or somebody to really back that amount up. Maybe they did. Maybe there's always something we don't know about behind the scenes. So this could be the big fight that they announced for the summertime. This could be his next opponent. And last but not least, former champion Keith Thurman. Keith Thurman, he was in the runnings for a Terence Crawford fight a while back, maybe like 3 or 4 or 5 months back. He was on the Akram Barak show, and he mentioned wanting to fight Terence Crawford. And in some other interviews, he talked about getting $10 million for the fight, which to me that was just kind of like a high number he threw out. But I think he would have been able to negotiate because as soon as he said that, they kind of just blew him off. And, they said he ain't getting $10 million, which I don't think he wanted that. I think maybe he would have got like maybe 5 or 6 if they would have, negotiated with him. To me, yeah, $10 million is too much for a Terence Crawford fight, especially whenever, Keith Thurman is coming off a loss. I think that maybe $10 million to split between Crawford and Thurman would be fair. 50-50 split, that would be cool. But yeah, I think that he might also be in the mix because, Terence, because Keith Thurman, he is trying to get back into the mix, in the welterweight mix. He wants to put himself back in the running to fight Errol Spence. So he's probably trying to get a belt. But I also heard that Keith Thurman is trying to fight Devin Alexander or Andre Berto, to kind of get a tune-up fight, which would make sense. That would make sense because, Keith Thurman, he's been out of the boxing ring for 2 years now. 2 years. So that fight, I'm kind of thinking, might not be the one that's on the table, really. Keith Thurman, after 2 years off, coming back to fight a title fight against a very tough fighter and Terence Crawford just doesn't sound right to me. I just couldn't see Keith Thurman being a tough fight for him after 2 years off. But yeah, style-wise, I think all of these would be some good fights for Terence Crawford. They all make sense. I think the least interesting fight would be Keith Thurman right now, you know, just because he's been off for so long. The fight I would really want out of all of these is the Shawn Porter fight. I feel like Shawn Porter is the fresher of the three. He poses the bigger threat and the bigger challenge for Terence Crawford. And again, you know, it makes sense. He's the #1 ranked contender for the WBO belt. So why not get that common opponent on your resume like Errol Spence has, you know? Yeah, the second fight, Manny Pacquiao fight, would be interesting, but since Manny Pacquiao doesn't have a belt, it's not really interesting to me. You know, Crawford, Pacquiao, whenever he had the WBA belt, would have been dope, because that would have been a unification on one side. You know, Crawford would have had the WBO and WBA belt, while Spence had the IBF and WBC. Full on unification by the end, right? But, you know, Crawford, he still wants this fight, you know, because it's money. You know, that's how it is with, you know, the Floyds and the Mannys. Everybody wants to seek that fight because they know it's a lottery ticket. You know what I mean? So that's the one reason why I know Bud, he really wants that fight. But for me, and I know the boxing fans, the hardcore fans, they want Shawn Porter, which is the fight I hope they do announce. But yeah, style-wise, going down the list once again, Porter, he would probably be the biggest challenge right now. Manny Pacquiao, he would probably be, I'd probably say he'd probably be just as much of a challenge, maybe for like the first half of the fight, until Crawford, he really starts to figure him out, because I think Crawford definitely has the reach and the boxing skill and the power to get the respect. I don't know if he could really handle the overall veteran skills and just the overall second nature that Manny Pacquiao has now. You know what I mean? Where everything is just so natural to him. You know, how he was able to handle Keith Thurman, you know, just going into the trenches, you know, schooling with the speed and the boxing skill and just the crazy angles. So we'll, you know, that's still a question to answer too, you know. But I think that fight is only interested for 6 rounds, because I think eventually, yeah, Bud would probably adjust to it. You know, he would make those right adjustments in that fight, and eventually, you know, beat or outbox or possibly stop Manny Pacquiao. And again, Keith Thurman would only be interesting if Keith Thurman wasn't so rusty. If he wasn't so rusty right now. So yeah, man, hopefully this week we get a fight announcement for Bud. I hope it's one of these 3 fighters. I hope it's not Jose Zito Lopez, or, you know, a C or a D level fighter right now, because I think a lot of people are getting fed up with that. You know, I kind of am too. I'm kind of fed up with where the Spence Crawford negotiations and talk is going right now. You know, I think, you know, boxing really needs to do better right now, and they really need to come to their senses as fighters and promoters to know that MMA right now is really kicking their behind. And yeah, they're just kicking their behind as far as making the best fight the best. You know, let's be real. You know, if this was MMA, let's be real, Spencer Crawford would have already fought. Porter Crawford would already happen. Thurman would have fought Porter 2 or 3 times by now. You know, they would have split however that went. You know, nobody's afraid to lose in MMA. That's my point, which is something I'll talk about in another video. But yeah, man, that's pretty much all I had. I just kind of want to come back and talk some boxing with y'all, do a boxing discussion video about Crawford and his potentials for this week. Who's it going to be? Let me know in the comment section, guys, who y'all think it's going to be. Combo Breaker 99. I'm out. Subscribe. Peace.